Welcome to True North Project. This is Christian. Today I have a conversation with Jonathan Roug, who is the president of the Float Tank Association, the founder and CEO of Float Light, a wellness business specializing in flotation therapy. He's also the founder and CEO of Wellspring Visionary, which is a marketing agency that's helping to scale conscious businesses. Tune in for a deep dive into topics such as philosophy, curiosity, and their connection to science, the nature of education and consciousness, Gnosticism and understanding the divine, the role and evolution of art in the technological era, integration of AI into immersive experiences, personal growth journeys that we've both been on and different spiritual explorations, business development, creating immersive wellness experiences, transformational wellness architecture, AI language models as second brains or an extension of our intelligence, and of course, all things floating, as John is the owner of a float center, as am I. If you enjoy this conversation, you can support this podcast by sharing it, giving us 5 stars, and making sure you're subscribed on your platforms of choice so you don't miss any upcoming episodes. That's a great zero-cost way to help us get more epic guests on the show, and it makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside, like all my dreams of becoming a podcaster when I grow up are coming true. So hope you enjoy this conversation with Jonathan. Ciao.
Good conversation there.
We're doing it now. Yeah, we're going to hit the thing. We're going to record now.
Okay, you're good, bro. Man, I always say it, bro. Just hit record.
Yeah, you can always cut,
right,
but you can't. You can always cut, but you can't add good stuff in. Yeah, when you first started, you were talking about your law school or studying law, and I'm like, this would be a cool story. I should hit record, and then I'm like, well, fuck, we're kind of just jamming, maybe not. But
no, it's okay. Yeah, no, that's all right. That's all right. So just to be clear, because I don't want anyone to jump on this podcast and be like, yo, John's a lawyer. I did not graduate from law school. So I am not a lawyer. And a lot of people ask me why I didn't graduate. And it is like one of those, I guess, mind-altering questions. You'll never know.
Well,
I mean, why didn't I graduate? I was inspired. Like, I needed to build a business. There was a lot of frustration happening at the time with the education system. And I'm like, why?
Yeah.
And here's the other thing. Like, there is so much more to learn through experience. And that's kind of what our whole conversation's led into. I can tell you with absolute certainty that even though I studied religious studies as a minor, I mean, it wasn't my major, but still, and my major was actually political science, if anyone was curious. So like I was on the opposite sides of 2 spectrums, which is crazy to think about. Political science too, by the way, isn't necessarily a topic or a school of thought that involves like politics or anything directly. It sometimes does. It really is the study of how to conduct proper, statistically probable and relevant research studies. Like literally, how do you write a research paper correctly and not have like logical fallacies and other things? It needs to be a peer-reviewed, potential published document, So anyway, sorry, I went on a tangent.
That sounds like a valuable skill to have. But so we're gonna put a pin in AI because that's where I hit record because we were about to go down the rabbit hole with AI, and I want to come back to it. But before you says I am not a lawyer, so this is an interesting way to start. What are you?
Gosh, let me tell you what I think I am. Well, actually, let me tell you what others have told me I am.
There you go.
They actually think that I am because I walked and I think they thought this for a long time, but they think that I'm like an android or something because I said, and I said this before, I was like, I'm in the beta stage of my life. And you might know me as a programmer. So they'd be like, what do you mean by beta stage? And I'm like, well, sometimes you can slip from alpha to beta. So I'm not like the final build, right? I'm not in the golden release version of my life. So if you ask me where I am, I'm not particularly. Look, I'm not an Android, at least not as far as I know, man. If this is some Deus Ex Machina, going on here, then we got some. I'm sure that it's going to be on this podcast. People will be like, "Yo, that dude's definitely an alien or an android." But, but yeah, no, I feel like I'm. If I was talking like a programmer, man, like there's different releases. I'm not. I'm like in maybe. Am I in Delta? Maybe Beta? I feel like I'm in the Beta. I really believe I'm in the Beta. I'm beta testing my life right now.
So in programmer speak, do you just add numbers or numerals, whatever, like letters, like delta, gamma? Do you just keep going until
Hmm.
you're like, what's the very beginning of the build?
You know, yeah. So that's a really good question. I think there is somebody out there that's like, it's absolutely this school. Like, this is how you're supposed to do it. I don't really know if there's anything that really signifies what the start of a build is. But if we were to go off, like, for instance, GitHub, for instance,
Hmm.
um, everything is just based on a set series of releases. So, like, if I was to say, like, and I think that's kind of what you're asking me, like, what is the first release? Well, programmer, I don't really think there's a name for that. It's usually just version 1.
Got it. So
Like there's no title associated with it. Or maybe it's version. You wouldn't go, this is version 0.01 because we haven't made it to 1 yet. That would just be an arduous task if you were building something,
right, right.
like to version it out based on the subs,
Yeah,
like how
yeah.
would you determine the percentage of the amount of code you just wrote over the last 6 hours or
Well,
something, you know?
you could say that like you could say that in biological terms, a human or a zygote, so a fertilized egg, is version like it's like
Mm.
sub version one. It's like point one or whatever. And then that
Yeah, yeah,
eventually
and that
it's like
it
a
does. So
pre-release.
we do kind of do that in programming. So it's usually like, if you were to say what's the first one, it would be like, it would usually be version 0.1
Got it.
dot 0.
Got it.
You know what I'm saying? Because but but the point is that it's still version 1,
Yeah.
like in my you know what I'm
It's like
saying? Like,
the beta
what do
to the
you what do
beta.
you want? I guess you could say that this is, we didn't do our best today, so we should keep going until we're at the better version, because we have to stop somewhere so people can technically test the thing and then go through some more analysis. But
This is a
it's still
good
valid.
this is a good metaphor for life, dude. Because
I'm serious.
yeah.
Let me tell you, even do this with graphic design too. Like, I'll never throw away an old design. Instead, I'll duplicate the design and I'll keep working on the design. And so if you look at my system hierarchy, both in my brain and on my computer, you would find multiple versions of these documents that have just slowly evolved, because I just can't. Sometimes I just love the way it turned out, but I know it's version 1. So I'll legit create a version 2. I won't just save over the document. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it's smart. From a design perspective, it's smart because what you're seeing is like a living evolution of the idea, and there's something really dope about that. It's something also liberating because you have a copy, so you can keep going and you can keep exploring, and you don't lose, previous work if you decide to revert back to the old version. But so here's the
And that there's that benefit too. Obviously, there's like that
so
inherent
let's
benefit of
ground
always having
this
a backup, right?
let's ground this metaphor down to human life, human speak. So, uh,
Yeah.
let's say like, and I'm curious about like I really like the frame by the way of like I'm in the beta of my life because I feel very similar. I feel like I'm just actually getting close to potentially a new version, like a new build. Like, it's been building for a while, but it's not released yet. You know? And so
Yeah. No,
and
I hear
so
you, bro.
but the release is coming in some way. Anyways, so I think about like pre-birth as kind of like a pre-release of version one. Version one's like you're a kid, you're curious, you're fucking like, wow, life, everything's like novel, it's wild, and you're just like lit the fuck up. And then like somehow the environment devolves version one into like a worse build, and you get like a sad set of circumstances most of the time, I think, with kids where they kind of end up in an ego build, a new version that's in some ways it's more adaptive for sure because you have to adapt to your society that you're born in, but in lots of ways it's a worse build. It's devolved in a sense because, like, for example, you kind of have to stop, like, if you want to really be well adjusted to a society, um and accepted and like move up the ranks and all the things in the social hierarchy, then you kind of have to like compromise in some ways. For example, if you want to be good at school, um, you might actually uh, get better at, doing what's expected of you, testing well, that kind of thing, and stop following the curiosity, right? Because curiosity isn't necessarily the highest priority in the stack in school. And not in every school, but like say most generalized education systems. So I see, you know, human development, at least in our society, as this weird thing where you start out kind of like in a pretty great fucking build, and then it sort of gets devolved in a way because you have to adapt to an environment, right? And then you get like all the toxins
Yeah.
from the food, big pharma,
Man,
big chemicals, all the
man,
things.
I had to tell you, man, like I'm in this like health kick in my life where like now I feel like everything's trying to kill me.
Yeah,
Um, you know, like
forever
you
chemicals.
know, yeah, I'm serious. Like it's crazy that I don't know. So there's this documentary I watched yesterday. It's called What the Health.
Huh.
Dude, it will terrify you, dude. I will never ever touch bacon again.
Yeah.
It's evil. Like don't eat bacon, like and I'm on a keto diet, like, and
Hard to get the
like
fats.
adapting.
Hard to get the fats without
Well,
animal products,
right, right.
unless you're eating a lot of just coconut and avocado.
Yeah, but oh yeah, so ghee too. That was the other one. Bulletproof coffee.
Yeah, dude, I've been on this for a
It,
long time. I've been doing bulletproof coffee for like over 10 years. Um,
that's amazing, bro.
yeah, I love it. I'm a big fan of healthy fats, and the cognitive, zing you get from a good, well-crafted, like my coffee's been through several builds as well. And
Your
I've
coffee.
arrived I've arrived at like version like 9 or something, and it's fucking
So
dialed.
so you got to tell me the because
You want to know the
because
dialed
so
version?
my partner and I we get Danger coffee, right? So this is Dave Asprey. I don't know if you heard of him.
Yeah, he got me on the bulletproof train. I am grateful. Well, I won't give you my
Oh yeah,
opinion. I
is
won't
that
give
the
you my
guy who
opinion of
invented
Dave
it?
right now, but go
Okay,
ahead.
okay. So no, okay, I will listen to your opinion of Dave. I think this will be an insightful conversation, but I just figured out who this guy was, literally, like 2 weeks ago.
Right.
So I know you're like, man, you are so far behind, John. Like, what are you doing?
What do they
How
do
do you
out
not
there in
know who this
Wisconsin?
guy? Well, the thing is like I appreciate diet, but like, dude, when I had my mindset, dude, dude, I'm on a spiritual journey right now, bro. Like for real.
Welcome to
Yeah, that's
the
why you find me out in Las Vegas. I'm traveling all over the place. Dude, this is what
yeah.
I needed in my life. Seriously.
Las Vegas
Um,
is the pilgrimage site of people on a spiritual journey.
usually I would imagine so. Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense.
It's where you
You know,
go
they
for
end up
the
at Area 15
it's
or
it's where
or
you go
end up
for
at
the
Burning Man or something.
yeah, it's where you go for the Dark Night of the Soul chapter before you actually have your like come back to Jesus moment, your come to the light
Yeah,
moment.
everyone goes to Vegas, but eventually leaves
Yeah.
like, yo, I'm awakened
Yeah.
somehow, even though I just experienced this massive amount of trauma to myself and my soul and my health.
Yeah, yeah.
It's funny. Yeah, yeah.
So
But
bulletproof
anyway,
bulletproof keto.
yeah.
I lost your audio.
You'll get it back, bro. Just
There,
let me know when you can hear
I
me.
can hear you.
Yeah. So remember I was telling you about the mixer. I was telling you about some of my setup. Like I love the pod mic. It's amazing. I like the Roadcaster because it does all the compression. That's why I sound so good, right? Because I do a lot of these FTA roundtable stuff like that. So I like also good audio. And I did a podcast, a local one called the Floating Night Live for a while, but it keeps disconnecting, and then your audio goes into bit crushing mode. I don't know if you've ever heard of bit crushing waveform.
Oh,
It's it's
so I sound all
weird.
robotic
That
and shit.
sound bit crushing is like it's like where all of the information's getting scrambled, but you can sort of make it out.
Oh shit. So
So
I was speaking in tongues and you weren't getting it quite.
for like literally 5 seconds because I didn't miss too much. I knew we were. So you got to tell me. I was on the spiritual kick. We were talking about
Yeah.
Dave
And
Asprey,
bulletproof,
Bulletproof
yeah.
Coffee.
Yeah, health
Yeah,
journey and what the health. And so basically, everything in the environment's trying to fuck with you.
kill us. Yeah,
The
dude.
food's pretty toxic. Water has these forever chemicals and fluoride and all the things that are actually pretty rough. So, you go from kind of a nice build.
Sugar-free Red Bull, which I'm not really supposed to drink, but I have to. I need energy. Oh my god, I'm getting yelled at.
So
Mm,
you go from like a nice pure,
sorry.
biology, nice build, given, you weren't born with some sort of downstream effects from the environmental catastrophe that we're in,
Yeah.
which the new generation, a lot of them are born with a lot of the damage already done. But the point is like you're kind of devolving for a while, and then education, you're kind of like in a way your mental map gets sort of limiting. Like the map is pretty small. In other words, it's safe to explore. I mean, I'm speaking from my personal experience, which is a little extreme because I grew up in a fundamentalist society where the territory there is pretty small, both geographically and uh, cognitively, ideologically, whatever you want to say. Like,
Our friend Elliot, Elliot,
yeah,
he explained to me uh how you grew up, and I was just blown. Like, I didn't know, bro. Like, so you have one hell of a crazy story. I mean, I didn't even hear part of it, so like, but I'm not expecting to. Like, I know that you want to have a conversation maybe one day, and it's not for me to know unless you tell me. So, but it sounds to me just like the little bit I know, it's like, holy shit, man, you've lived quite an
well,
experiential life so
it's
far.
not a secret. I've been pretty open, just with this
But you have
podcast and stuff. Yeah,
okay.
so I've been really open with the podcast, because I feel like there's one of the silver linings. And first of all, I'm not a victim, and I feel like everything
Hmm.
that's happened, like every obstacle in my life has been for me, not happening to me. But like life is happening through me. And so really the obstacle is the way, you know what I mean? Like how else would you get strong if you didn't go through hard shit? There's the only way to get stronger. So for me, the early 20s was when I left the bubble, right? So 20 was when I read a document called the CES letter that popped me out of Mormonism, right? And that was the small map. So the whole world, like if you think about from video games, I feel like I can talk to you about these metaphors, which is cool. So it's like if you're in a video game, right? Like you have the
Yeah.
map, right? And let's say you
Okay.
started out playing something like Fable or Skyrim or something, and the map is the tutorial in version 1, right? Like you're in the tutorial, so the map's just like the village you start in. And you're like fucking figuring out the controls, right? And you're like
Hmm.
exploring, like maybe like you're kicking around some chickens or something. There's no real monsters yet, right? And and so like
So like a wireframe, like you don't have the textures.
well, yeah, but you're in kind of like you're in the Shire, right? Like you're in
Okay.
Hobbiton. There's no real
Ah, there we
danger.
go.
There's no real danger,
No
and
danger.
it's like you're just sort of like figuring shit out, and you've been insulated in this sort of bubble, and then it's not until you get some sort of call to adventure, right? Like a hero's journey, where you have to leave the ordinary world, and your map expands, and you go into the other world or the underworld or whatever you want to call it, and that's where all the real trials and tribulations and the dragons are. So but those trials are in fact, like Joseph Campbell would say, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek. So it's the actual, the dragon at the caves, he's guarding something important. So for me, leaving say Mormonism was a super critical beta. Like it was a shift from version 2, I guess, to like version 3. You know what I mean? Like it was, if version 1 was like me as like a little kid, version 2 was me as like a kind of confused, less curious kid, kind of like adapted to a culty society. And then version 3 was me like as a rebellious sort of like heretic kid, like fucking I'm out, and figuring out what else is there. So you kind of go through these progressions, right?
Yeah.
And I like to think of them as like chapters of a story, because humans are storytellers, and it kind of makes sense in our brains to think of it like a
Yeah.
story.
Yeah. And when you talk about the versions of life, because this is like I mean, it's crazy that it comes as a result of my like how I think about myself, but I guess we all adapt to how we think about the world in general. But when you even write code and you're adding things, so version 1 or version 0.1.0 is going to be an initial release. It's in beta and probably even in some, it could be even in like delta, like whatever you want to classify it as. And it's really just given out to the rest of the programmers, like the programmers' families get to distribute this to friends or something like that and be like, hey, go test that code, see what they think about it, and send it back to us. We haven't even gotten funding yet from a VC,
Right.
So we're still writing the code asking for venture capitalists to fund us, and we don't have anything to lose. And it's like, maybe some of us are a little sketch. Like, should we give this to our friends? They might steal our code. And we'd be like, but we know there's so much more to program. So like, forget it, because that happens and it ends up on GitHub and somebody's like, yo, we got like the version, the pre beta to Twitter or some shit. And it's like, dude, what the fuck are you going to do with that?
Right.
I mean, honestly, you're not going to get anywhere with that. But anyway, as a programmer, we write things. So think about it as infants. We're like babies crawling around, like we're using our arms, like in picking up objects, right? And it's like, what are these arms? Well, these arms are features, so we're adding features to the code, and that's what we do as programmers too. We're adding a feature. Like somebody's like, can this program communicate with my Gmail? And then we'll add that API access in. Or somebody's like, hey, I really want a button here that says clear because it's not intuitive enough. And that's usually like a UI designer, which if you know anything about me, I'm like a deep level database programmer, which is I don't really like the UI, so the user interface side. Like I can do it, but I don't know. In probably about a year, I'll probably be interested in UI again, and then I'll just dive down that hole. But then I'll be less
I feel like
interested in databases.
I feel like we have a lot of there's synergies here for sure, like a lot. And from the design perspective, I'm all user experience front end. Like I love that shit. Like to geek out on that. And it's not like I'm writing code, but
Are you serious?
yeah, I love it.
Dude, we could really collab, bro.
No, like
Because I need some help with some things.
if you think about really true the one of the most creative things I've ever done was create this wellness business. And the one of the funnest parts is thinking about it as a floater, like as somebody who loves to float, creating a business for people who float. It's fun because now you're like thinking about it from the user experience, and even from a graphic design perspective and a website and like the funnel, like the how am I going to get people to get in here, and where are they going to go from there, right? Like that whole flow is really fun for me. And where it's kind of led, I was not expecting, which is basically right now I'm working on a rabbit hole. So basically, you walk in the door to a wellness business to try, a float or a cold plunge or a sauna or whatever. And, you're somebody who's probably a little bit more on the curious side. You're coming, I mean, our brand, I think, selects for curious people and filters out normies in some ways.
I can say that's for certain.
Yeah. Which is
your messaging is all about like capturing curiosity, and I love it. And I'll say I think it's one of the best ways to go as far as this type of business, because like people really they do adapt to curiosity.
yeah.
I love that. I love it so much.
Thanks, man. So like if you create a like, and I love that you already do this, you play with like the idea of Easter eggs in your center, and people can like find free floats in your Zen room and shit like that, right? Like you're playing with that. It's similar to Meow Wolf or some sort of interactive installation, you know what I mean? Where you're kind of giving people the opportunity to choose their own adventure and to kind of find, it's like an interactive world, you know what I mean? And so I like the idea of creating a rabbit hole where the float center, the wellness business, is like a portal. It's like the rabbit hole, right? Like a rabbit hole is just a threshold. It's a portal into a new world. So you walk into the lobby.
Yeah.
The lobby is the liminal space. It's the space between worlds. It's like the platform 9 3/4, right?
Exactly,
like you're right.
Exactly how I look at it.
Yeah, dude, I love it. So you've got like
crazy.
You got like platform 9 3/4 happening in the lobby, and you're like, yeah, we got to get your credit card because we live in the fucking Matrix.
It's sort of normal. It's not completely like subverted your expectations yet. Like we're getting there.
Yeah, but there's like little clues that this place is kind of different, like the art hanging up's like kind of weird, and you're like, wait, what? And then you take your shoes off, which is part
duck
of
floating and the next to a naked guy. What? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So then taking off the shoes, which is another kind of part of the ritual, right? Like you're kind of
Hmm.
leaving the ordinary world, you're taking the shoes off, you're kind of doing the papers or whatever, like the lobby stuff. You cross the threshold, which is a door that's closed, it's never open, and then it closes behind you, and now you're in the other world, right? Now you're in the other,
Yeah.
you've left the ordinary world, you're in a new world. And that's actually threshold two. The third and
Hmm.
final threshold is actually when you enter the tank. So that's a deeper inner sanctum type
It is,
threshold.
and see, this is the philosophy, and you have nailed it right on the head, bro. Like how, yeah, I think it's like you're a really good you either adapt this or you're in the best podcast interviewer ever because you've unlocked my brain, or maybe you just have that instinctual thought process
Well, where it came from,
because you're absolutely right about what you're saying and how I visualize it. I guess I never really described it like that, but I love your description because it's like so true. I try to transport people into another world. I
yeah,
really do. And that's the experience I'm trying to give them to the point where everything changes, not just the visual aesthetic or even that weird, like, maybe like even through like I don't know what's the opposite of like a kinesthetic approach to something where it's more like internalized. The entire experience is just
like
kind of enveloping.
interoceptive. Yeah.
Exactly, there you go, interceptive, and like, but not just in the tank. I mean, like beforehand.
Hmm.
So the temperature in of the environment slowly increases while you walk back to the tanks. I'm so detailed on this,
Hmm.
Christian. um the lights slowly dim as you get back to the tanks, and I mean there's a long walkway that people got to go through to get there, and we call it the aquarium, but it's actually like we call the entire experience the journey.
I love it.
So like the tank is not just that experience. The journey itself is as cliche as it sounds, because a lot of businesses like to say is we we provide an experience from the moment you step in the front door to when you leave. And I like to think like, really, bro, like I gotta go through this stupid security check, or I gotta say hi to some person greeting me. That's not part of the experience. Like literally, when you drive onto Float Lights grounds, the whole entire building is colored in a unique way. The building itself is just unique.
Yeah.
It's stucco texture look, and I mean I was lucky to be able to find something like this because I knew it was important. And Eric Anderson said it best. He said this place is like the float castle. And I'm like, dude, I know, right? But I also have all the lights on the outside, which is like overstimulating. In fact, Graham said he's like, this is the opposite of floating. I don't understand how you get anyone to go into the place. And he was insulting me, but I was also like flattered at the same time because, well, clearly they're coming in, so
Yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't do something wrong, right?
Yeah, I
But
mean the
but
flies.
yeah, it is true. Like I really build an experience from even the outset. And here it goes even one step further, Christian. I build the experience from when they're interacting with us online. From the first time they see an ad, it's building an experience.
Love it.
And so when you expand your potential to outside what you think is a bounds to something or anything, you're limiting your potential creativity as a result. You know what
Yeah,
I'm saying?
I do. I love what you're saying. Highly aligned here. I think that so I started out doing this just intuitively based on what I had experienced in my experiences floating, and really a lot of it comes from just like learning what not to do. Like when you come out of a float, maybe you're a little high, maybe you're like a little deep, and you come out and you're like fucking blue lights and people ass talking to you and you're like, what the fuck, like leave me alone, you know. So like you get some of those experiences, you're like, that's not how it's supposed to be. And then you kind of intuitively start to shape it. But where I got more grounded for me was when I discovered Mircea Eliade's work. He's a philosopher of religion, um, maybe historian of religion, but I think he's a philosopher of religion. But basically, he wrote the book or the textbook on um, basically sacred and profane space. So the idea of creating sacred space is something that humans have been doing. It's one of the things that makes us different from other animals. We've been doing it forever. Like the idea of burying your dead, right? Or anything like that, where you set apart a space from the rest of the space, right? Like, and I'll bet you fire had a lot to do with this, right? Like fire and light are being able to create light with fire. allows you to now delineate certain things from other things. And now you create, like a cross, for example, which is a delineation of a sacred space. A cross is a symbol of kairos and chronos, or like the infinite and the now, and like the basically heaven and earth, coming together, and you're marking
Mhm.
it with a symbol. And so this idea of we're already, as humans, just fundamentally hardwired into us, we're already creating things as sacred and delineating things as sacred, even if it's like, I picked up one pebble off the beach and I put it in my pocket because it, for some reason, I wanted to. And it just like, it felt different to me and I grabbed it. And now it's like, if you're a kid, it's a sacred pebble. You know what I mean? And it's like it's going in your drawer with your other sacred items. Like you're collecting these things. So basically, if you think about
Isn't it amazing, like the fact that as children we would covet such basic items, and that feeling, if you can still feel it to this day, you have to like really dive into your inner child to know what that feeling feels like, right? And like, what does it feel like to find something precious, a small inanimate object, and try to remember what that feeling feels like?
yeah, I mean,
And that spirit at heart. I am actually like, I think if you'd ask my partner, she'd probably say that I'm like a child in a lot of ways, due due to the fact that I really do dive deep into my inner child, and that allows me to do so much. But anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to detract, bro. I just had to make this notion because you kind of brought me back to like a nostalgic point in my life where I was like, I picked up something that I really cared about and I wanted to hold on to it. And I just brought myself back to that point,
yeah,
you know?
yeah,
You ever done that? Like
yeah.
that's like
I did it.
transcendental, like deep transcendental meditation
I
practice, like
The last time I can think of that I did it was not long ago. It was in September. This is just what comes to mind. But I was on a 3-day fast and I went and hiked Charleston Peak, which is the mountain by Vegas, the tall mountain by Vegas. And
oh, right on.
up there, this is super crazy. I had no idea till I got there, but like right before you summit, so I'm like, imagine it. I'm by myself. I'm on a solo. I'm like 2 days into a fast, about to summit this mountain, and there's a crashed airplane on the fucking top of this mountain, like right on the slope.
Holy shit.
Like, and
No
this
way.
crash happened like decades and decades ago. So the airplane's super old
Oh,
school, and it's like it's just rubble at this point, but it's like this old wreck from a long time ago, and they just like crashed right at the top. And I hiked over to the airplane and I picked up a little, it was just a stupid little rusted out like nut or something. Like it was just a little circle.
you
And
picked up like the history of that
yeah. And
event.
it was a
Yeah.
token. It was a token of my journey into the mountain and in that fast. And that it was kind of a bit of a vision quest I was doing. And then I came down off the mountain and I still have it. So like that's just, and it's obviously
That's
it's worthless.
amazing.
It's worthless. It's this little piece of rusted metal, you know? So that,
No, 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 no. That not to dude. See, I can feel that token of importance through you, bro.
but
Because
that's,
if I found that in your journey, I would have been like, dude, we're taking this with
but
us.
that's
Like we
my,
need
but
this.
that's my whole point is that from anyone else's
Yeah,
perspective who doesn't have the context and the subjective connection of this, the meaning of it, it's worthless. It's just a piece of rusted metal.
it's true.
And so what I believe is possible with float centers in particular, but with any kind of, I mean, Meow Wolf can do this. Like really any business can do this. It's not subjective. It's not relegated to just like one industry, but you can spark curiosity again and you can bring back the sacred into people's lives. So I would argue that at the heart of our environmental crisis and our health crisis and all the existential threats to humanity and to the world, all the species that are dying, the heart of that meta crisis is a forgetting of the sacred, and it's a loss and a death of the sacred in our own hearts and our own minds. So and so fundamentally what happens if you lose that connection, you lose it then you're cut off from the sacred, so your soul kind of dies in a way, like it hibernates, it goes away. And so I believe that the suicide epidemic and the crisis of suicide is also linked to this concept of sacred, which it's so deep in our human psyche. So when you when you intentionally design a space like what you've done at Floatlight, that and what we've tried to do at True North, where it brings people on a journey, as you call it, where they cross a threshold from the profane space of the everyday world where everything's for sale. You know what I mean? Like we're in the fucking profane life of world of capitalism and everything else where it's just like everything has a price tag. And then you cross over that threshold into sacred space where it's like, okay, this is a place for curiosity, for deep self-discovery and exploration and healing, and connections with other humans that are beyond the screen. Like we're not here to doom scroll in the Zen room. We're here to drop in and talk to people or to be in our own inquiry, self-inquiry. And then when you go into the float tank, it gets even more profound because now you're in the inner sanctum, which typically would be like in the center of the temple, right? Like it's like where it's the holy of holies, right? And so
Mm,
there you have the water.
such a good
There
analogy,
you
bro. I
have the
love that.
water, which
Yeah,
is the most
so fucking
sacred
good.
thing on earth, the fucking water.
So good, bro. Like this is such a good analogy. Oh my God.
Well, what
Damn.
else? What else
Dude,
is more
you're
sacred?
blowing my mind right now.
Give me, all right.
No, it's so true, but
If
I never
you're
put it to the that's so true, dude. We are a sanctuary. That's the truth. And you
100%.
know what? I mean, you know what? I feel it. It's not like I don't already represent Floatlight that way, and I think the guests do as well. But yeah, we're a sanctuary. We're like legit Floatlight, and your and True North is a sanctuary. And it's ironic too because the new space we're building is called the sanctuary. But you know that's going to be even on another level, bro. Because I'm excited about that. But yeah, it's like a sanctuary, and the ultimate part of the holy temple, the most sacred space, is the float tank in a way. I mean,
Yeah.
and you know,
It's the
it is truly insane
it's
that yeah,
because that's
it's
where,
brilliant.
in my experience with all of the other, wellness healing modalities and whatnot, right? Like I've I've had really profound experiences of healing, say in a Maloka with other people, in like a medicine journey, where it's
Yeah,
still incredibly powerful sacred space. And I'm not saying you can't have interpersonal sacred space where, in fact, it can be some of the most profound sacred space is the space you share with others. But something about the float tank and its ability to, because it's such a safe container for you to shed every mask, to drop all of the bullshit away, it allows you to get to a deeper sense of self than I believe is possible in any kind of social environment, because there's
yeah,
always the social self present even when you're deep in a psychedelic journey. Like like for example, I've been on like a hardcore I was in a hardcore experience on ayahuasca where it was very intense, and I was very self-conscious of the fact that I was really ruining everyone else's experience because of my vocalness that was coming out, and it was kind of all autopilot. Like I couldn't stop it. It was coming up, and that really was like, fuck. I mean, I think there's value in that experience and I wouldn't want to have changed it. But when I go into the tank, I can have no reservations. If I want to fucking sing, I sing. If I want to hum, I hum. If I want to be silent, I be silent. If I want to cry, I cry. There's no reason not to be authentic in the tank. If you can't meet yourself fully authentically there, where the fuck can you meet yourself fully
yeah.
authentically?
And this is, I feel like this is something that I really should try to empower folks to understand is that emotional release um can happen in the tank, and they should be comfortable with that. And you know, it's a really good point. So you've given me much to ponder about on that front too, because I think that there's an untapped potential for the tank and just the float industry in general to utilize this tool as an even greater, more deeper, uh, more appreciated approach, even by like the psychological community, the community that's helping folks with like trauma and stuff like that, because I think there's something there for sure.
So
So
yeah, I think I'm curious where you land on this particular question that I have. So I know like in prior float conferences I've heard, like so sort of a narrative that, and I think this might have stemmed from John Lilly, who's the inventor obviously of the float tank, for anyone who doesn't know. But basically this idea that you should floating should be built in a neutral space where there's no programs. There's nothing programming the because he likes to use this metaphor of the biocomputer. So humans are a
Yeah.
biocomputer. It's a beautiful metaphor, and it actually might not even be a
Yeah, the
metaphor. It might just be literally true. Like
yeah.
we're a
No, yeah.
biological computer, right? And so your hardware was evolved, but your software was designed. Like somebody
Hmm.
downloaded it into you via a particular language and an operating system that came along with it. So if you're in a float environment and you're going deep into self and you're kind of stripping away the layers of the programming and the operating system and you're going deeper and deeper into whatever is at the core, you know, which I would call soul or something, then or being, you know, the imperturbable center of being or whatever. Then the idea would be like, don't put anything in the center that the float tank is in that would impress upon the person. Keep it as blank and as neutral and as bland as possible. So it's all about whatever's inside of them and not about what's on the walls or the vibe or the music of your space. What do you think about that? Like, do you agree with that?
You mean like try to not have any stimuli and just make it a completely void of all stimuli as possible? Or you're referencing back to the biocomputer? Because I think you said two things here. With the pre-meta programming concept from that John Lilly wrote about. I think that I mean, just through my own I mean, I've walked thousands of guests back to these tanks. So I feel like I've conducted my own little mini qualitative analysis. And if I was to be really, really detailed about it, I probably could have quantized my experience anyway. But so I know what a guest needs to not know before going into this environment, because I can tell you with absolute certainty that the subtleties of how you introduce them to this world will affect their experience without a doubt. 150%. If somebody walked past you in the hallway and said it's cold and they were just joking, and the other person couldn't pick up on that sarcasm or comedy, or maybe they were being honest, that tank is going to feel cold even if it was the perfect temperature, right? So all of these little subtleties do come into play before going into that environment, because you're so deep. You're just so deep. And the flow tank itself, it's true that, reducing the stimuli to nothing is, that I say that's a more ideal space. But Christian, I must tell you that I've worked on some projects here at Floatlight and they're still operational. I don't have a practical like commercial application for them, but I'm huge on automation. So in each of the little stars on the top of the tanks, because I have a Starlight cabin, it's a Superior float tank. I programmed single addressable LEDs to each individual strand. And then we bought this device called an Open BCE, which is a brain. What's the name of it?
Like
It does
ECG,
a
EEG scan or something?
yeah, sorry, yeah. But it's called Open BCI, so you can look it up. And it's an EEG, and it's actually taking 16 channels, so it's 16 electrodes, and with the channel data, we're able to. Well, I was able to, because this is a custom project completely. I was able to take that data, pull it out, and use it as functioning like changes to the lights on the ceiling. And what I think I've built is a biofeedback mechanism.
So basically,
And
people.
it when it works, bro, it works. Like you can wear this helmet thing. You're in a float tank completely, and you have to put a swim cap on. And I'm still working out the logistics of how you do this, but because I know dude, this is all boilerplate, completely bootstrapped, just John invention time, right?
Love it.
And so it's crazy. And you wear this thing. I pitched this to Justin Feinstein. He's like, "Oh my fucking god, bro! Like, can you come to Maui and show me this shit?" And I'm like, "Yeah, bro, I'll come out there and show you."
Just for the record,
But you wear this.
Justin Feinstein sounds a little bit more scientific than that, but go ahead.
Nah,
I'm
well,
kidding.
so if you believe it or not, he actually said this to me because I
Maybe.
talked to him, but he was also being unscientific at the time. So we'll just leave it at that. And if this makes it on air, I'll make sure Justin knows that I do not question his scientific capabilities
Rigorous.
by any means.
He's rigorous and
Yeah,
articulate.
Yeah, he'll be totally fine with it. So anyway, yeah, so you put this thing on your head and it's not like very pretty at all, bro. Like I told Justin, I'm like, dude, can I please get that EEG that's at the Tulsa lab? And I still think I don't think he has access to it now, but he's like, yeah, let me get a hold of the guy. And I probably should follow up with him and be like, Justin, can you please get a hold of that guy again? Because I just want that one thing that sits on the forehead, you know? And that would be so much better than this ridiculous open BCI plastic helmet that clearly isn't very comfortable and is going to get water into it and it's not going to work. But anyway, long story short, I got the 16 electrodes, had the 16 channels, really simple, mapped out the 16 channels to the LED lights and determined some frequency and pattern organization, which wasn't really that hard either. And then eventually displayed lights on the ceiling. We were
So
able to take like a baseline, another unique approach, and so on and so forth.
So you've got basically a wearable that creates a biofeedback loop between you and the lights. So as you think you see the lights illuminate, is that kind of the vibe? Like basically what's going on, brainwave patterns are affecting
Let me
what lights up.
so let me tell you about the story about how this all, because I did this thing and I was so blown away by the craziness of what I was doing that I didn't actually think about a scientific study and what this could be used for practically. I was just trying to create the color green, right?
Okay.
And I didn't actually, and so like you have to create a baseline. Like, where's my mind if I'm not thinking about this device? Do you understand what I'm saying
Yes.
here? Like, I'm trying to get to a perfectly meditative state and record that data at the perfect time and try to figure out what the baseline is where I'm not thinking about the thing that I'm doing because I'm my own subject.
Yeah.
It's weird. And so and all I'm really doing is I'm taking the data from my mind, and I could have done this with another person. This is why it's not a practical application, because like I can't, how are we supposed to test this on everyone? And I mean, yes, it's true, there are certain like general wavelengths and frequencies of the brain that are calm enough to where I can map out, it's almost like a hysteresis. So it's like from a small point to a high point, and I can determine that this is what the whatever range affects this function. So like the function could be like just stay at a static color. Because if I was to somehow just randomly scatter the data over the lights, it would look like static
Right.
from like the Andromeda galaxy
Right.
or
Right.
some shit. You know, so but yeah, no, eventually I did. I got it to where it was like I think about this in this potential world and it would change the lights, dude. It was so crazy, dude. It was like I was in a science fiction movie, bro.
Yeah, that's really cool. But how do you see that? Like why? I mean, other than curiosity, and that's really cool. Why do it in the float tank? What would be the benefit of having the lights change with your thoughts? Because like, wouldn't it be kind of a
That's what. Yeah, no, I don't disagree.
okay, good. Hey,
This is just how I think, bro. I'm just weird. Like I come up with these crazy ideas. And like, look, if you were talking the 80-20 rule, right? Or in my case, 30-70 or whatever. Or, yeah, you know what I mean? Like just come up with weird shit, throw it at a wall and see if it works sometimes. You know what the greatest part about that is that you're living life. You
no,
know what I mean? You're
no,
just
it's
exploring. You're being, you know, a
I'm not
kid.
I'm
I'm
not
a kid, bro. I'm a child.
I'm not poo-pooing it at all because I feel like not only do you learn something that goes on a shelf that eventually could become very valuable. Like at some point later on in your life, you could be engineering something or developing something and be like, "Oh fuck, that's what it's for." And then you bring it in and you're like,
Then
"This
I
is the
already know
perfect
that it's for.
application, right?" So you learn shit and if you're curious, follow that thread 100% of the time. I'm with you. What I'm interested in is
Yeah.
how to architect or design the most transformative catalyst, like the best, like how do you create the best catalyst
Yeah.
for personal expansion and transformation? And this is why I asked you what your take
Yeah.
was on the neutral bland versus, creating a more
Yeah,
programmed.
I apologize. I did get into a tangent there. So I agree with you. Like, if we were to talk about like what is the deepest environment you could get in, without a doubt, you know, just reducing as much stimuli as possible is absolutely at its core going to help you get there.
Well, Okay, so
But I
let me ask you, like, here's my question, right? So really
yeah, okay.
it's around art, right? Okay, so if you think of it like this, there's two tools here in this particular case. One is, well, there's three main tools. One is the float tank itself, which is basically just sensory. I don't like the word deprivation, but we reduce sensory input as much as possible, right? And then
Mm,
the other is you're playing with space. You're creating a sacred space versus a profane space. So the idea of creating a good threshold and all of the things that come with setting someone up and priming them for the water, right? Because somebody going in there all stressed and nervous is different than somebody going in there, in a calm, open, intentional headspace, right? So you want like to play with the space properly. You want the float tank to be dialed. But then there's a third tool that I think can be very powerful. And this is contrary, I think, to John Lilly's point. Um, Potentially, I'm not sure, but I think I'm in kind of the opposite approach, which is that art, I believe art fundamentally has the power to shift consciousness. And I think that art has always been the tip of the spear of culture. So the art seeds culture and culture follows the art of the culture. So the artists are sort of out on the edge, pioneering and exploring, and then the culture sort of follows later. And I would say, I mean, this has always been the case, right? With any revolution of human rights, of environmentalism, it starts with artists and fucking wacky dudes at the time. They're considered weirdos or heretics. And then later, like decades later, you're like, oh, they were ahead of their time. Look at that. Holy shit. And so, what if you used art inside of a wellness center to expand consciousness? So it's not zero stimulation. It's not like we've created bland fucking beige everywhere. Everything is just beige and like Chinese like Zen harps playing.
yeah.
Instead,
Can I expand upon the rabbit hole just a little bit?
go ahead.
Like just a tiny bit? Because I don't want you to lose your thought, but
It's ingrained in
for
me.
me, oh yeah, so this is like your core philosophy, which is great, and we'll dive down it. But like when I look at the art and the whole point of bringing up, remember, it's like the artists, they would be at the forefront of the revolution. I really believe that art as we know it right now is in evolved to the point now where the new artists are going to become programmers and prompt engineers. And that's going to be looked at as art because I'm telling you, there's going to be like the traditionalists, like the artists, but there are going to be people who paint with technology at a whole new level you've never even understood or can comprehend right now. It's almost like trying to comprehend a tesseract, a four-dimensional hypercube, right? So like how do you comprehend what is not comprehensible yet? The world is in a divide in a strange evolution into this AI world,
Yep.
and it's going to get weird
Yeah.
really fast, but it's okay because
Let's
I'm adapting it. Okay, so but we're going to keep going down your rabbit hole.
Well,
I
I'm
just
gonna
wanted to let
bridge.
you know.
Yeah, yeah. I like
Okay,
you set it up.
I
You
got
set
it.
it up, and I'm gonna circle us to
Okay.
AI. All right. So trust me, I'm gonna get us there. So basically, let's just play with this because I think this is gonna tie in nicely. So you've created a journey, as you said, a journey into a sacred space. So in a way, it's a hero's journey where you're crossing a threshold, you're leaving the ordinary world, you're going into the cave. You're going into sometimes an ordeal, like sometimes it's an emotional ordeal or whatever it is that you face in the float tank, and it can be very transformative. And I'm suggesting that you use art inside of that journey in the same way that Vince Caldebeck and Meow Wolf use art to shift consciousness, in the same way that Alex Gray uses art to shift consciousness. And in fact, with my buddy Nico's project called Art Drop, it's now possible to just like replicate visionary art that would normally cost thousands and thousands of dollars and create 3D replicas of it that are indiscernible from the original and hang those in float centers. So basically, you can have the Sacred Mirrors trilogy, or not trilogy, but series, because it's more than three. But like you could have sacred mirrors on the walls, which are basically just the human form. So if you want to see like what a human form looks like from the skeletal to the energetic, all the way up that spectrum, you could have those on the wall. And it's not like you're putting some sort of ideology on people like join my cult. All you're doing is you're saying, this is human and you are that. And
Mm,
it awakens consciousness because what you see is, oh yeah, I've seen a skeleton before. Oh yeah, I've seen a human with muscles, like a muscular system before. Yeah, I've seen, wait, what's this? a human energetic body with chakras and a fucking aura. It's like, holy shit, that's part of it too. I didn't know that. And you're
It's
seeing,
so, you know what? If you saw that is this a piece of art that you've
yeah.
seen?
Just
Like this is
look at the
this
Sacred Mirrors
Gene.
series, Alex Gray.
All right, I gotta look at this. Gray made this piece of art. What is it called?
It's so these are life-size paintings that are the size of humans, and they're
Okay.
called the Sacred
Okay.
Mirrors. And it's a series of a progression of the human form from the basic skeletal system all the way up to ethereal energetic system. And Alex Gray studied
Okay.
anatomy. I mean,
I love
he worked
Alex
in a
Gray. This
morgue.
guy's
He
amazing,
worked in
by
a
the way.
morgue for a long time, just studying the human body. And his visionary art's phenomenal. So he's just one example of what you could do. You know, you could curate a transformational art gallery where you're
Mhm.
walking into a dope fucking art gallery that's like awakening and expanding consciousness as you're going into your float experience. This is very much different from the keep it super simple, neutral, bland, beige concept, right? Where you don't impress on people. And in fact, I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying impress liberating structures, like plant rabbit holes, create liberating structures, not to you know, coerce people into anything or to trick people into something that's bad for them, but to give, you want to increase human sovereignty, you want to increase human creativity, right? And how can you create structures that do that, that actually liberate consciousness? So that's what I'm interested in, and then this is where I think it comes into the AI space, right? So now imagine you're in the float tank, you just had an epiphany, right? You've had one in a float tank. I know you have, right? You've had many. So you have one of those float tank epiphanies.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have
Yeah.
one of those float tank epiphanies, and it's like, fuck, I need to capture this, but I can't get out because then I'm gonna lose the thing. And it's like I'm in the thing. I need to record it, right? And so you have a microphone that records
Mm.
the epiphany. So you speak the word, which in the beginning there was the word. This is Genesis. Like literally
Yeah.
God spoke the word and basically spoke reality into existence. So it's like, okay, we're creators, we're like gods, we can create with the word. We're doing it right now. And so basically, you start in the float tank where it's the best place. It's the void. It's the space for you to connect to from the plane of all potentiality, that space of like pregnant possibility. And that's where the idea comes in. And then you are the channel for it, and then you speak it. That's step one. Now you leave the tank, you have your post float session, maybe you journal, whatever, but that recording is yours. And what happened? Well, there's you can get it depends on how weird you want to go. One is it just went into an audio file, which you then file into your, AI powered second brain, built in some awesome tool for organizing and becoming an extension of your intelligence. Like I'm building a Notion, or you could even have that mic be a two-way AI assistant, and you can actually have a conversation so that you can, while you're in the float tank, walk through this ideation process. And that AI is writing and recording everything that you're doing as you go. So now imagine this: you've just reduced the lag time from ideation to manifestation massively by being in the perfect space for the ideation to happen. I mean, think about how much gets lost when you go from floating to writing it down an hour later. How much did you lose? How much can you actually bring
Mm.
back?
Yeah. In fact, like the whole premise that you're making here is something that I think that almost maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like a lot of people had to have thought about. In fact, I've had guests come out of the tank and be like, "Man, I really needed a voice recorder.
Yeah.
I wish you had a voice recorder in there." And I'm like, "Yeah." I actually thought about it. I'm like, many times I'm like, it'd be cool to install that. But then I'm like, the logistics of it, like, what if somebody thinks it's creepy,
Yeah,
dude?
yeah, yeah.
So like, I've honest to God, like, because I'm the type of person that will make something happen. Like if somebody says, I really want that, I would just go and do it, especially when it comes from my guests. Like my guests will be like, hey, I wish we really had this thing. And I'd be like, oh, just come back in a week and just come back next week if you want that thing. And they'll come back next week and we'll have that thing, even if it's just for them. Just because, why the fuck not?
Yeah.
Especially if it's super cheap or something. But even if it was expensive and enough people were like, dude, you really need this thing, I'll break down and be like, all right, let's just get it for them. Like they need it. like they need this fancy hair dryer or something that changes your life. Like whatever. I'll get it for the makeup room, okay? Um
Right. So so
but yeah, no, yeah,
let me
yeah,
let
go
me
ahead.
let me stitch this together a little bit more, because there's a couple of memes here that have to be set up, and then it kind of, I think, weaves together nicely, hopefully.
Can we take like a quick natural break though?
Yeah,
Just real quick.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I is that typical? I don't know if you can do that on a
I
podcast.
can
Do people
pause,
do that
yeah.
sometimes?
Pause, record real quick.
Well, there's a couple okay. Couple drops I want to make too, but you'll probably cut this part. But there's a couple things I wanted to mention, if it's okay. I wanted to mention some things that might resonate with people that may listen to this in all worlds of life, but something also, a little bit. Can I say this without you adding it to the recording?
I can just hit
Yeah,
pause on the
like a little bit of
recording.
self. No, I mean you're not gonna just cut this in, are you? Um, I guess a little bit of self promoting. Like everyone's got a product to sell, right? So I don't know if that's something you allow on your
Yeah, yeah,
podcast.
sure.
You want people to.
Yeah, we can,
All right.
let's plug away as soon as we finish the thread, because I don't want to drop it. We're talking
Okay,
about
I gotcha. Gotcha.
this idea of using sacred space, of using the float tank, and of using art to create a catalyst for evolution of consciousness, expansion of consciousness, transformation of humans, right? And the next kind of step to that is like, well, we're in the AI age, we're in a new revolution of AI, and that's emerging. So how does maybe that play into it, right? And how does the evolution of consciousness augmented with artificial intelligence look? And so if you created the feed the if you got the tech solved, which isn't that complicated, it's basically just connecting via a microphone a person in a float tank to a language model. That's it, right? And then
Yeah, in today's world, yes, that this would work for sure.
yeah, exactly. So
Yes.
you connect the microphone to the person's voice, and that voice goes to language model. I guess you would need some sort of speaker if the AI was going to speak back to the person in the tank, right? So, but the point is you could have a particular language model, and you alluded to this earlier in the
Mm.
conversation, and this language model is the language model that's trained specifically for you. In other words, this is your AI bot. This is your AI language model. This is an extension of your intelligence, and this AI is trained exactly on your brain. What I mean by your brain is your second brain. So you've created a digital framework, an architecture that was designed. It was actually kind of like a lifestyle design exercise where you designed how you wanted to create your digital life, in other words. And your brain is where all the information that you resonate with and that you want to store. So, in other words, if you can't hold everything inside your physical, biological brain, and you write stuff down in your journal, and you use your phone for stuff, and you use notes, and you navigate, and you listen to podcasts, and all these things where the information lies outside of your memory and right outside of the actual biology of your body, why not bring all of that into one? Why not bring all that into one center, one hub? Do you know what I mean? And you could build that in
Yeah.
whatever tool was, best for you. I'm currently
See you later,
building
that
one.
logo. That meeting. Cool.
I'm currently
Sorry about that, Christian.
don't worry. So I'm currently building my second brain in Notion, right? And
Hmm.
so like I've basically been designing it for the last couple of months, and I'm now templating it out. And what I'm going to do is we've also talked previously about Soul Quest, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a hero's journey called Soul Quest, where it's kind of a rabbit hole where people can go deeper into this sort of transformative kind of journey, and then using a template can design their own second brain and start having a tool where all of the knowledge base is stored in one place, and you have an extension of your intelligence that's powered by AI that is being trained on all that information. So it gets more and more context as you populate it with stuff that you resonate with. That version of AI could then, and this would be a question for you as an engineer, would be, could we get that AI from Notion through some sort of, I don't know if it's an API or whatever, but get it to a thing that you can talk to in the float tank? Or
Yeah.
worst case, you just, I mean, this would be plug and play right away. This is super easy. You just use something like that Plod Note tool that I talked to you about, or use like Otter or
Yeah.
something. You just use a transcription AI that grabs all the text from you talking, and you feed the transcript to the Notion AI. That would be a temporary fix if you just wanted to grab whatever you said in the tank. But if you wanted to have real-time feedback between you and an AI that's trained on your brain. In other words, if you want Jarvis, your personal assistant, hanging out with you in the float tank so that he can take all of the information that you're saying, you know what I mean, and actually create actionable shit from that, and populate it into your brain, and just reduce the lag time between ideation and manifestation. That's that's a trippy that's a trippy, potentially really problematic, and also very exciting proposition. So what do you think about that? I'm going to re-record. Okay, so a little technical difficulty. I'm just going to summarize that idea real quick and then pass it back to you. So you
Yeah.
have someone in the float tank with a technological interface between them and an AI, basically just a microphone, potentially a speaker if the AI is live and talking back to them. Um, and then that on the back end of that is an AI chatbot that's trained on either, there's two options. Either it's just transcribing, right? And then you're feeding the transcript to the brain, which is good enough, and that's really safe. It's just a one-way mic, It's like just recording your thoughts, that's all. That's like this,
Hmm.
that's like the mild version. The spicy version is like it's actually an API into the Notion AI that you've been putting all of your data into, and it's like your actual your AI brain, and you're talking to it, and it's actually working with you in real time to create shit. So you could be like, create a page for this, and like let's build out this idea.
Hmm.
So what do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I actually really like the idea. If you're talking to me as an engineer, as a software engineer, I could say that there are a million ways that this could be implemented, implemented in a very positive way and appropriate. I guess one question I had was is like this could be an experience built upon itself, like in particular in the float tank, but in the real world anywhere. I mean, technically speaking, this artificial intelligence could get to know you, and that could be your, I mean, if you call it second brain, like you were saying, it could be that.
Yeah,
And that's essentially, I mean, what you're doing is, and maybe I'm oversimplifying it, and maybe you're, and I'm sure I am, but what you're doing is I think exactly what a lot of people are thinking can already be done because I've spoken to a lot of people about this. Like we're thinking that in the marketing world, at least, like that we could build a program where you load the information about your business, for instance, into this chatbot and you pre-train the model. So like I think I don't even know, maybe we weren't recording at the beginning, but like I said one thing that I thought a lot of people I was trying to explain, like whenever we start a new text thread, a new instance of OpenAI's ChatGPT, or it could be any of the other LLMs, like Llama or anything like that. It could be Bard. Um, we're creating mini instances of micro trained models, and those micro trained models are trained on us, on whatever information we've given it prior. And it's like these little branches that keep branching out. And that's why it's almost like, if you're used to using ChatGPT now, you're like, oh man, I really don't want to start a new thread, but the way that their interface organizes everything just really sucks. And you probably got to download a plugin so that it's organized if you even know that exists. And then even then, like sometimes the chat will get broken because somehow it'll say that you did something wrong and then they lock you out of the chat, right? And it's like that really sucks. So like as a programmer, you learn like what the sandbox looks like, like so you go into the app developer side and then you just build these models out. I mean, for good, they don't get stuck because they're using tokens from your API key as opposed to using the $20 paid service for OpenAI's ChatGPT, for instance.
right.
But when you explore even deeper, like, dude, this whole concept of large language models is subverting so many people's brains about like what programming is, because we went from a world where we had to write conditional statements about objects in like this virtual space and how these objects interact with other objects in a virtual space to now we just tell the thing exactly what we want the object to do when another thing happens to that object, like in language, in like human spoken word
Yeah.
or written word. And it's so weird. It's like, dude, how do you go from complex programming to overnight talk like, oh, we don't need to program anymore, now we just need to talk?
Just prompt it. Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a revolution for sure. It's probably just the beginning of an even crazier transition, you know, like it's going to get less like just like how initially when computing revolution happened, the friction between you and the computer was really high, and it actually started out with just pretty much nerds and technically savvy people being able to really utilize the tech and use the tools. And then that got easier and easier from a user experience. Cheap computers got cheaper and cheaper. And then it got to the point where it's like now everyone has a computer in their pocket and it's ubiquitous. And the user interface is through your thumbs, you know, and through your voice. Like it's super easy, it's super clean. That's going to happen on steroids with AI, where I mean, and to take into its fullest extent, you're probably looking at like Neuralink and reducing the or expanding the bandwidth by just going hardware straight in, which I
Yeah.
personally I'm against that just because I feel like I want to live a human life, you know? Like I want to
Hmm.
I mean I just feel like at some point you got to draw a line. Do you want to go full augmentation all the way and, you know, transhumanism,
Mm.
right? And like just merge with the machine and upload your consciousness to the AI at some point and like that's the full merge? Or do you stay in the mindset of like these bodies, this lifetime, this planet, you know what I mean? Like actually be an embodied human in this world, not in the metaverse,
Yeah.
not in some other
Yeah.
uh
I understand where you're going with this, and for me, the bandwidth problem is a real thing. And I think that with augmentation, kind of like with anything else, it's a one little thing that you keep adding to your to your biological machine. You keep adding this more, this more non-biological hardware, because we've already done that, right? With our cell phones. Like we've accepted that there's an extension of our bodies that we typically always need, and that's a phone. And we're doing that with like we even wearing these headphones right here. These are an extension of our body. Like we could have made a conscious choice just not to have this meeting, and I'd have had to fly out to you, and I'd have had to speak to you in person, but we make this choice to adapt certain pieces of technology that would be considered biological augmentation.
yep.
So all it takes is a matter of time before something comes out where increased bandwidth of our of the potential of how we get information into the device. Because right now, using our fingers or even using our mouth is slow. It's so slow. It's like at magnitude slower than anything where the computer is
But
capable
it's
of handling in the first
but it's
place.
better than thumbs.
Oh, I mean, talking is better than thumbs, but
Yeah.
thinking is the ultimate
Yeah,
thing.
and
Like, forget it.
that's why Neuralink's going. You know, you're talking about doing it with
Yeah.
lights, right? Like you created a Neuralink with a rudimentary Neuralink device with an EEG helmet and lit up some lights,
Yeah.
which is cool. But like now imagine
It's like 8 bits of potential.
And now imagine you've got a fucking highway of information between you and an
Yeah.
AI, and it's just like plugged right in. I mean, I see the advantage, you know, I see where it's going, and maybe I'll be at some point some sort of obsolete boomer type person who just like didn't plug in all the way. And maybe I will. I don't know. Like it'll depend on how it kind of rolls out. I have a problem. I think it's kind of a rapture ideology in some ways to just like, in other words, if you go back to that conversation around what's sacred, to me, being a
Mm.
human in this body on this planet, being an embodied human present, and like it's good enough. Like I don't need to go full machine. Do you know what I mean? Like I want liberating structures. I want the machine to liberate me to be more human, like to actually be free to go rock climb and to be with my future kids, you know, and to like hang out in the human ways. Like I don't want to always be plugged into a matrix where it's always, you know, where I'm in some sort of digital land all the time. Like Zoom is fine, like because I love talking to you. Like this has been fun, but I would
Oh
way
yeah.
rather, we rather do it in person.
Oh, me too, bro. Like honestly, like that trip to the top of that mountain, I don't know. The way that you talked though, you were so ambitious that you were like, "Yo, I'll straight up have a podcast on the top of the mountain. If it's a thing, we'll do it." Because we were talking about the sprint van, remember?
Oh yeah.
The sprinter van.
Huh?
And I'm like, this is so cool. Because I've never really been in a sprinter van before. Like, so yours was the first I've ever really seen and in my life. And so I'm like, this thing is kind of cool. And I like it. It's neat. Is that what it's called? It's a sprinter like
Yeah,
van or
yeah.
whatever.
So Mercedes makes a van called the Sprinter, and not
Okay.
all van life vans are sprinters, but a lot of them are. They're popular in like the van life community. Yeah. This one, this one,
Oh, yeah. It's so
this
nice.
one's called a Storyteller. Like Storyteller is the company that builds these particular vans out. So if you're curious.
Okay. Oh, storyteller.
Yeah.
So like the van was built by another company that built out the van from its
Yeah.
like normal bucket seat things like whatever the
Yeah.
little seats.
They buy stock Mercedes Sprinters and then they convert them into Storytellers.
Oh, that's is there like a storyteller?
Storyteller Overland is the name if you want to check it out.
Oh yeah, I'll look it up.
So
Cool,
so
thank you.
John, this has been fun. You know, point people wherever you want to point people. They'd be lucky to find it, I'm sure. Float Light's dope if you're in Wisconsin. You must check it out. I must check it out. I still haven't been there. I really want to. But yeah, do you have anything that you want to point people towards?
Well, yeah, I mean, not in particular. I know that we didn't really focus on the industry, and a lot of people, if they do hear this, like I'm very passionate about floating. I
We
serve
can do
on.
a round two where it's all like if you want, I'll like because I tend to go super wide, and so we can do a round two where it's like
You just
more
want to
dive.
stick to be specific. Yeah.
It'd be fun.
And like I said, I'm not really trying to sell anything to anybody. But if you, like you just said, if you do ever come out to Floatlight in Appleton, man, I'm always, if I'm here and you ask for me, and it's a genuine thing, like try not to sound like a salesperson because my employees particularly know how to identify you, salespeople, and they say, no, John's not here right now. The owner's not here if you don't mention me personally. But I would love to hear from you, anybody out there. Feel free to send me an email, jrogue@floatlight.com. But yeah, I mean, I'm this exploratory thinker that likes to paint on the canvas of entrepreneurial life. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a good way to put it.
I think we're both aligned in that regard, and I would love to uh do what I can if I can do anything, which I'm sure I can do something. I don't know what it is yet, but I would love to contribute my creativity and gifts in whatever way I can to the float industry. So I'm doing that, with True North, but I would, help out FTA in whatever way I can. Um, I really do think that it's weird, man. It's like floating's fucking changed my life, like big time.
Mm-hmm.
And I floated last night, and it's just like every time I do, it's a little reminder. It's like, oh yeah, I forgot why I started this place for a second. I was like stressed or busy or whatever, and it's like got too sucked into the game, into business, and then you come back to the tank, and you're like, oh yeah, we just need more people to float. Like we just need to get more
Mm-hmm.
people in float tanks. So I'm a big fan of making this industry pop off, and I think that the way we're going to do that is we're going to bait and switch people by pulling him into cold plunge.
It's probably true because I'll tell you something that's funny about that. We're gonna bait and switch people because the cold plunge industry is kind of exploding. If you
Yeah.
didn't catch the reference, right? And we'll probably introduce those people to the float tank, which then it will flip flop again, and then we'll have to do the opposite again. But because I've already seen this with massage, like I have two massage suites, and so like they'll be like, what is that? And then we'll go show them, and they're like, that's interesting. And then they'll do that, and then they'll become float people for a while, or they'll be float and a massage person. But yeah, I think the multi-modality float center is kind of a symbiotic thing, and like take your approach. But from your perspective, it's true. Like if you have an extra room that doesn't have a tank in it, and you're struggling to get your other tanks booked, don't book another tank. Okay, don't build another tank. Like build something else that can complement that because this is what we're kind of starting to learn. Like, you really need that like multi-pronged approach to wellness when you're building these facilities,
Yeah,
you
I
know?
think that the idea of the pure float center is, if you can do it and you're nailing it, all the more power to you. That's fucking great. I think it's really cool. I personally think that it kind of requires a big market, and you really have to do it right. It's not easy. It's harder to do. And is it as impactful as something like a transformational wellness center, right? Where you can bring together
Yeah.
lots of different tools and create, like if you were to just go from a beginner's mind approach to a design space and say, how can we architect or design transformational wellness? What does that look like in physical, and then like in digital and in social? Like what kind of spaces are we creating? What is transformational wellness? How can we engineer that? And I don't think it's just float tanks. I think that there's a lot of components to it. Like art's one of them for sure, for me, in my mind.
Yeah.
Visionary art is transformational. Cold water has been incredibly transformational for me. Sauna's amazing, breathwork's amazing, psychedelics play a role. There's all these different modalities that kind of, and floating, of course, that fit into the toolkit of transformational wellness. So I think if, it's you're trying to turn an industry around or really pour the jet fuel on it, I think that bringing in a different mantra than just float center, and it's more around, wellness center, maybe transformational wellness center. That seems like, to me, that feels more like not just a better business model, but it feels like what the world fucking needs. Like we need to figure
Hmm.
out how to transform our society in some way because we're heading off of a cliff.
Yeah. I absolutely agree with that 100%. And when Floatlight first started my business, it was just a float center, right? I actually started off with 2 tanks, and then the third one I finished building, but I started off technically with three tanks, one facility. And that operated for a year or so, maybe a little bit over a year. And then I added the massage suite, but like it was hard, the first year just getting the thing off the ground. I had a lot of momentum from the community. But I mean, I guess looking back on it, like when you open a business, you're just like, you're there, right? Like I don't have any employees, like I'm just there. Like you exist in this state that's like I'm either going to open the door and let people come into this place that I have a huge amount of, my own personal sweat equity and money and other things into, and I owe back money on, and just do it. And you build through that process, and you really have to invent something that people see is unique and there's passion behind it. And so like I would, it would be wrong of me to say that part of me and my soul and my identity and personality hasn't become part of my business in the hallways, in the books, in the culture and the art and the philosophy is kind of an extension of me, but that was laying its foundation. And through the over the time, more and more people, whether it be the employees, the guides, the guests, they would add unique perspectives. And I think I mentioned this to you earlier, Christian, like the perspectives that they would add really come down to like, it would be really cool if you had this, or from someone else's unique experience, I thought of a unique idea, or the act of floating itself and doing the whole visualization process and making sure that I do the best I can to get the information I've come up with in the tank onto into the real world, whether that be through writing it down. But typically speaking, when I float, I like tend to think of something, and if it's really groundbreaking, I'll get out of the tank, I'll get changed or whatever, I'll just start working on the thing. Like I'll just not forget that that was what I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
And so
What
I
if
could
you
probably be
could?
more
What
efficient,
if
but
you?
yeah.
Yeah, we could be more efficient. And we're gonna fucking do it, dude. You're gonna start talking to an AI, and you're gonna start building while you're naked, laying in float water. You're gonna
Yeah.
start building
So
with your mind. That's amazing.
I know I love that. And guess what I just ordered right now? Guess what I just ordered?
What?
I ordered the plod.
Oh, did you? You'll
I went to
probably
plod.com.
you'll probably get it
Yeah,
before me. I'm supposed to have mine weeks ago, and I can't fucking find the thing.
oh
I
my
gotta track it
God.
down. But anyways, yeah, that's a good start. And for the record, the plot is just a little recording device that transcribes your audio by AI transcribes and just records shit for you. Yeah, it's just a little recorder, but powered by AI.
I know. I'm so
It's already
excited to
there.
get
It's
it.
like the tech's already there. And in fact, it's cooler because now it's not something that's the float center owns. You just walk in with your own device that's you own your data. It's your fucking thing. You just set it on the side. Don't drop it in the water. That would be expensive. Set it on the side and and like it'll just pick up any audio as you float.
Totally. And that's, dude, I'm all about it.
Yeah. Well,
I'm excited to get it. I don't know anything about it, but just by what you have personally said and your recommendation, I am trusting you that this thing is worth $159.
I
And I know you got a better deal than I do.
I'm laughing at this because I haven't even used it, so don't trust me.
Well, that's okay.
I
Recorder.
just
Look, I mean, the way you pitched it though, it was like, oh my god, I need this thing. Like, it like literally magnetizes to the back of your phone. I really need this. I have an iPhone, and I'm all about the magnetization part of
yeah.
the iPhone. I love that. So I'm kind of I'm already infrastructurally set up for this.
Yeah. I mean, then you could just call
So I think
somebody.
it's gonna be great.
You don't have to be on some app. You can just call somebody on the phone and you can still transcribe the convo over the phone,
Oh, I
which
know.
is
That's
either
that's
extremely creepy or because now you're just tapping someone's phone, right? Like they might the
but
person on the other
how does it
side doesn't know that you're
how
recording.
does it do that though? Like if you're just listening to it on your ear, you have to put it in a speakerphone mode, right?
I don't know. I
Like
haven't used it yet, but apparently not. Apparently it just clips onto the phone and it can gather enough audio to transcribe. I think
really?
so.
Holy shit.
I could be wrong, but yeah, I don't think it has to be on
Well,
speaker.
okay, well, if that's true, man, like wow, I just solved all the recording phone call problems, even though like the system I've built personally for Floatlight does record audio, but that's a whole nother rabbit hole.
Yeah. So you could just put one on your team's phone and it would record all the calls. I don't know. We should play with it. It could be
I
hyped
don't
up.
think that I think that that would be cool, but for somebody that really needs a simple application, but the way that I built
Yeah,
mine,
yours is super
uh
automated. It's cool.
yeah, very automated.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
but
man, it's been a pleasure. I'm going to stop this recording now.
yeah,
Ciao,
yeah,
ciao everyone.
good.